Okay. All right. And my name is Susan Anderson. I'm an instructor at CanScribe, and today we're going to talk about acceptable variations. I'm going to apologize right off the bat. I have a little bit of a cough, so I have a cough drop, and just bear with me. So just what is an acceptable variation? It's hard to tell the difference because they look the same when you see them in a report. Let's get started. So acceptable means allowable. Lorna, that's fine. You're fine. Variation means different. So acceptable variation is just an allowable difference. So basically, it's just another way to transcribe some aspects of a medical report, but most have to be transcribed in a set way. These allowable differences will show up as green and purple, just like other errors on your computer-graded reports in DictaScribe. Most importantly, though, no points are deducted for acceptable or allowable variations or differences on your reports. The key is knowing what is acceptable and what's not. And again, it's hard to tell because they look the same. And so, you know, you've studied and you're going along, you're doing your report, and you think you have it. You're doing the vital signs, and you think you have it. You know, you're putting in the correct punctuation, and you see it as an error, and you're like, okay, I have it this time. I think I've got it. You read the feedback, you're applying it, and you're ready to send the report. So you're feeling good, you know, you feel like you're ready, you're feeling all positive and everything. You hit submit, fingers are crossed, you're anticipating, you know, just, oh, no purple, no green, you're all, you know, everything is going to be great. And then you see it, a sea of green and purple, and it's marked everything all wrong. It's just the exact opposite of what you just had. And you're just, and a few other choice words, I'm sure. You know, you're just really, really frustrated. So you see all that, and you're just thinking, you know, what, you know, I feel like giving up. I'm frustrated. I do it one way and it's wrong, and I do it the other way and it's wrong. I just can't get it right. Does this look or sound familiar? I mean, seriously, I know we've all been there. So what's important to note here is that both the student and answer keys are correct here as far as punctuation goes. Well, let's just say right there, the pulse is incorrect. It was 64 instead of 54, but the comma is okay. The way they had it was okay, and all that frustration was for nothing. So once you learn that a comma is okay to go after a single, you know, just a series of file funds, then it's okay. Commas are acceptable. And the periods are also acceptable here. The thing you have to understand is that these are computer graded, and we have to show, the computer has to accept the allowable differences. And so when one is correct, it has to show it both ways. And I know it's frustrating for you guys, but the sooner you learn about, you know, what's acceptable and what's not, you know, the better off you're going to be, and the less frustrated you're going to be. So this is what happens when you don't fully understand what an acceptable variation is. That frustration sets in. So I hope that when the webinar is over, you'll have a little bit better understanding and maybe a little less frustration moving forward. So in your course, there's an acceptable variation guide, and it's there for you to review. And we're going to go over where it's located in the course and talk about it briefly. And then we're going to go on with some examples and some variation, some of the variations specifically that are mentioned in your account specifics. and some other ones that you'll see, you know, in your DictaScribe graded reports. Excuse me. So when you are entered, you graded. Lorna asked, are these the same in the real world? A lot of them are. You know, Lorna, you will have specific rules that your facility will want you to use. Just like we have our account specifics and we have our preferred method of doing things, they will have that also. And some will be very strict and some will be lenient. So just know that. Okay, so you're in DictaScribe, you've transcribed your report, and you've gotten it back. On top of every single report, there is the acceptable variations guide. There is directions on how to self-guide, the foot pedal, and also account specifics. Always on the top left. So if you click on the acceptable variations guide, it's going to take you to the CanScribe course, and it's going to take you into the facts or the frequently asked questions section, and it is going to go over the acceptable variations. And there's some good information there. If you're in your course and you want to just go read about it there, you can go to the same spot, go to your, excuse me, I'm so sorry, home page, go to the facts, the drop down, the frequently asked questions, type in acceptable, and it will pop up over here for you, and just click on it. Okay, so per the acceptable variations guide style and format, it says that medical transcription can be confusing at times. Well, that's putting it mildly. Pretty much the understatement of the year, I would say, because there's several different and acceptable ways to transcribe the same information. So if the same report was transcribed by all of the instructors here at CanScribe Career College, I can say with 100% certainty that there would be some differences in the way that the report would look in the end. Hopefully, there wouldn't be any critical errors or major errors, but you know, there would be probably some punctuation differences, paragraphs made at different places, but not, you know, the major sections like they're supposed to be. So you may notice these variations in the courses, differences between your submissions and how the answer key shows. So your reports in DictaScribe are computer graded, and I've written this out here so y'all can just have this to go over. But let's look at exactly what happens when with a report in DictaScribe. So to start the whole process, someone on our end, an instructor, has listened to the audio for a report and has transcribed it, just as you do, following the account specifics and book of style rules. Then the report is saved as a document, the answer key, and it's uploaded to the system for that voice file. It sounds simple, but it's really not that simple. The uploading is not simple, but basically that's how it happens. And when you submit, the student, you transcribe that report and submit it, it will be compared keystroke by keystroke to the answer key. So that includes every single letter, every space, every hard return, etc. Every keystroke is compared. So if you go to the end of the line and you put period and then space, space, and then you realize, oh, I need to have a new paragraph starting, and then you do a hard return, well, those keystrokes show up in the comparison of those two files. So just know that every single keystroke, whether it be a space bar, a hard return, everything is compared. And so everything is compared with those two documents. And sometimes you'll see a line break as like a line break error. Apologize. If you look at your key and the answer key, they look the same. And this is not an error. It just looks, it's just a difference in the way that the answer key was transcribed from your key, or, vice versa. So we're going to look at some examples of this in just a bit. So maybe the transcriptionist or instructor added an extra space to the end of the line, but as long as your student key looks the same as the answer key, even if the line break shows in purple or green on the difference key, then it's not an error. So let's look at this. Here we see drug allergies, and then look, it's an error. It shows up as an error, 39. And look, it looks right here like there is just a space right there. Objective number 40, and you're wondering, what have I done wrong? Because I didn't leave a space, right? If you'll look at yours, this is the student key. There is no space right here. It's all perfectly aligned. Everything is flush left, just like it's supposed to be. We look at the answer key. There is absolutely no difference. But let's go back and look. There's a line break, and for some reason, it must have been maybe somebody had an extra space on the end. It's not an error. As long as this looks the same as that, it's not, there's not an error. But it does confuse you. Okay, here's another one. Here's like a little, an extra space, and it looks like, okay, 40, 41, what have I done wrong? Why is there an error right there? Why is it marked? Again, let's look at the student key and the answer key. Sorry. And you can see that there is no difference, absolutely no difference. No difference in the spacing. But if you look back, it shows that there is an extra space. Maybe somebody left an extra space at the end of the line. We don't know. But when those two documents were compared, there is a difference. No, Cindy, we are not supposed to mark those at all. You're not supposed to mark those at all. Those are, there is absolutely, as long as they look the same right here, no problem, no difference. And even, going back to the other one, no difference whatsoever. Even though it says a line break error, there's no difference. As long as they look the same between what you've transcribed and the answer key. Okay, so here's another example. Just thrown in there, a line break error. And you're like, what have I done wrong? And if you look at it here, there's absolutely nothing there. And that's where you need to know. That's where you need to go, is to look at what you've transcribed and the answer key. And you see here, there is absolutely no difference. And so you can look back at this and say, well, 25, maybe, it may look like an error, but it's not one. And you don't even need to acknowledge it. You don't need to click on it and say no point value. Excuse me. You just don't even need to acknowledge it. Just be sure to understand these acceptable variations. Make sure that these look the same, and then you don't need to worry about it. Okay, so having said that, line breaks can be errors. If you need to make a new paragraph for like a major report section, like history of frozen illness, medications, allergies, etc., and that's a protocol error. Our account specifics rules say make a new paragraph for all major sections, whether dictated or not. So this would not be an acceptable error if you had, had not made, if there was a line break error right here. So you need to make sure that you know the difference, okay? So that would show up on your answer key, a difference between your report and the answer key in your report. And if you need to have the physical exam stacked and you leave it in paragraph formatting, well, that is a protocol error also, because, that's the incorrect formatting, and that will show up often either as like one of those little spaces or either a line break error also. And you need to count those. Those are errors. So I do apologize. So the answer key has to be able to show and accept all of these acceptable errors. Lynn asked, and that will include the new paragraphs without a dictated heading. Correct. Yes, that's right. But here's the thing. So if you just were typing along, say like a surgical note, and let me see what this is. And you were typing surgical note and you just broke a paragraph up where, the answer key may not have broken one up. That's okay. That's okay. As long as it's not a major report section, that you need to make one. And Sandra says, sometimes, usually in an op report, I'll start a new paragraph after or before the key has it. I think I asked before, as if you do not make a line break when there is a new part of the procedure being done, it's a protocol failure. But if you make your start either a line early or late, it's still a protocol failure. I mark myself on self-grades as if I was out working already, since body as a whole, I got that in my mindset to act. These are real and current. Someone's life depends on it. That's good. That's very good. And that being said, I don't think anyone would die if you are a line break, or am I wrong? Well, the thing is like I said, if it's in an op note and you just make a new paragraph where the answer key does not make one, that's not a problem. Or if they just say make a new paragraph and you don't, that's not a major problem. What is a major problem is when you don't, and it's per your account specifics. That's where you need to. That's where the sorry. I hope you feel better, Sandra. I know. I feel, anyway, yes. So, no, it does make sense. I know it's okay, the line breaks, you don't have to count them if it's not an account-specific error, as in a major report section. If there's just, because when you make a new paragraph, sometimes it's just subjective when you make a new paragraph, So, anyway, okay, when a new topic is started or another part of the procedure, that's correct. That's right. So learning the difference about that's right. But it has to be a major report section heading to be a protocol error, or physical exam, stacking, or, that. Okay. Okay, so here's another one. Okay, so let's look at this one. One of the children, and I tried to find some good examples. There are some other errors in these. It's not as easy to find specific examples as you would think. But one of her children was also ill. Line break. Her past medical history is. Now let's see what she or he transcribed. Okay, this is one of those where this is not acceptable because it's showing you the line break and it needed to be a new paragraph because this is a major report, past medical history. So, that is one that will show up, and also one needs to be, you don't want to start a sentence with a number. Just throw that in there. Okay, any questions so far on line breaks? Okay. So all other differences in the two documents, your transcribed report and compared to the answer key, will be denoted by green and purple highlights, and we'll be looking at some other examples later. The thing to remember is that a difference in style or format, as long as it's acceptable, does not qualify as an error. And the most important thing to remember is that you need to keep in mind that account specifics will always come first. And that's important enough for me to say again. Account specifics will always come first. Then the book of style. If you can't find an applicable account-specific rule, then you must follow the book of style rule. But account specifics first. Beverly says, did they start that sentence with 1 over 2. Yes, and that was an error. So it should have been, the answer key corrected it to O-N-E. They spelled it out. The student just wrote 1. That would have been an account-specific protocol error. Catherine says she has a big note on her monitor to remind herself account specifics first for her thick head. I get it, Catherine. Well, you know, honestly, if everybody could just really focus and get the account specifics down first, because seriously, it's 1.5 points a piece, and then you can focus on what you're actually listening to, and you can focus more on, excuse me, you know, the you know, the meat and potatoes, really. You know, if you can get this down, then you don't have to worry about that. I mean, those are costly errors. You know, they add up. They really do. Okay, so at the end of the acceptable variation guide in your course, it says, basically, it ends with this. But I want to point out this. 2 people will never type a report exactly the same. And that is the truth. And so, again, the answer key has to be able to show and accept these variations. So, you know, you might not appreciate it, but you're not always counted off for them. So that's the big thing to remember. You know, they're different, but they're not errors, and you're not always counted off for them. Okay, so we're going to move on. All right, so let's go over some of the acceptable variations specifically mentioned in the account specifics. Okay, so first of all, most of y'all are Canadian. I'm from the States, but you know that both Canadian and United States spelling are acceptable. British is not. You do know that those differences are pointed out, and the U.S. spelling is used in the answer key. So you'll see these highlighted as differences, allowable differences. I will note that if you're working in the States, or if you're working for somebody, you know, that they will expect you to use the U.S. spelling. So keep that in mind also. But, you know, you will see these differences, and they will be pointed out. And this is how it looks. Sorry. And this is how it looks on your report. It's an acceptable variation. It's not an error. But the answer key will show the United States spelling. Let's see. One thing I do want to point out is that what used to be an acceptable variation is no longer an acceptable variation, and it is a protocol failure. So in our new account specifics, it says place a period after each assessed item under the diagnosis, assessment, and impression headings. And they give it the example of diabetes under reasonable control. And used to, you would see diabetes, comma, under reasonable control. Anna asked, often Canadian is based on British, so is there a specific example of that? You know, you just need to kind of look and see. I know there's a dictionary. I mean, you just maybe have to Google it and see if it's British or Canadian. I Google things sometimes and write Canadian, U.S. question mark or whatever. You know, you just want to make sure British spelling, you know, and that's one way to do it. I'm sure there is a really good dictionary, and if I find it, I'll post it on the forum. I know that I've heard, I think Lisa has mentioned a dictionary before. I'll reference. I'll get that and post it on the. But there are differences. There are differences, and some are not acceptable for sure. Okay, so moving on back to diabetes. Used to be Used to be the comma, and then it would be, you would see the comma, and then the period. Okay, no longer it's the period, or it's a 1.5 error, protocol failure. Sandra says, this new rule with the period, I'm doing that, but beware the key still has comma in some of them. Yes, we are in the process of uploading. I know this is taking a while. That's why I said earlier that that process is not quite as easy as it sounds when I'm talking about uploading the files. Trust me, it's not an easy process, but we are in the process of doing that, and it will show period, and then on all of them. And just have to remember that the account specifics changed, and you're right when you put a period, but the key doesn't know that. Right. You just know these things. You have to know these things, and it will be showing up soon. Yes, Janice, the comma, you will see that. You will see that for a while, but hopefully these will be uploaded very shortly, and all of these will be with a period afterwards. But do know that we're grading that way because the new account specifics do say, no, Vivian, no. It says, place a period after each assessed item. Diabetes, period, under reasonable control. This is not, this is why I wanted to point this out to you guys, because it used to be acceptable, and it's no longer an acceptable variation. So you need to use a period and then start the description, or it's a 1.5 error. And this is in your new account specific. So everybody, make sure that you're looking over those and reading over those. You don't want that. That's a chunk. That's a point. That's a 1.5. Again, learning your account specifics and getting those behind you will take care of that. Just from now on, do your diagnosis, put a period, and then move on. Okay. Catherine says, I got caught up on this change more than once. A few protocol errors straightened me up. That's the truth. And Danielle says, thank you for verifying that. The answer keys had me confused. Thought I was doing it wrong. No, and we apologize. We are desperately working to get these complete. Trust me on that. Okay. All right, so let's move on. Okay, there's also sometimes more than one way to spell a word. Distension is a good way. It can be spelled with D-I-S-T-E-N-T-I-O-N or D-I-S-T-E-N-S-I-O-N. And you will see this highlighted in reports. As a difference in your reports. Okay, Sandra says, actually, I don't mind it as much. So the keys have a few flaws. I am at the point now I know the key is wrong. Previously, being a computer program, every time you say you're going to update the keys, I show. I used to work as a and every time I updated something broke loose on the other end. I hear you. Okay, well, we're going to move along because I've got a lot to go over. Okay, so Stegman's has this note about distension, and it says, although that D-I-S-T-E-N-S-I-O-N is historically the more correct spelling, the word is usually spelled D-I-S-T-E-N-T-I-O-N in the United States. So keep a mind on that. I'm not going to be counted off for it. Just make sure that you are aware of it, that is the difference, and your facility may want you to spell it that way. Also, words like orthopedic versus orthopedic, or they say it the same way. But just note this is kind of odd. Even though the correct U.S. spelling is orthopedics, the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons has adopted officially with the AE. So I worked for a place and they wanted the AE. So you will have to just know that with your facility. They will give you rules on that. So some of this, and really I would say most of this, is up to you guys to see if these are acceptable variations or not, as far as words go. If you think you're correct, look the word up in Stedman's. If the word's in there, then it's acceptable to use for your dictations. We're pointing out these acceptable variations for you that you may see in the working world. We want you to be prepared Different facilities will use different versions of the same word, just spelled differently. This is very important, though. Okay, Catherine says, speaking of Stedman's, if they have a medical term formatted a certain way as two words without a hyphen, but the answer key has the same term formatted, would that be an acceptable variation? If you can find it in Stedman's for dictation, yes, as long as it's following the book of style rules also. You know, if it's supposed to be hyphenated or not hyphenated or anything like that with the noun following or anything like that. But this is very important. Do note that you are expected to spell terms the way your CanScribe course spells them for your test. Anytime you take a test, go to your CanScribe course material first and spell it the way that they have it. Do not go to, don't come and say, well, I found it in Stedman's. That's not, it doesn't matter. We are basing the test is based off of your CanScribe course. It's a computer graded test, and that is the way you will be graded on that. So note, this is important. Spell any terms as the course has the terms spelled. In a dictation, it's different. In your course, your test, spell it the way your course has it spelled. Let's go over the hierarchy just since we're here. Verifying information, follow the hierarchy. Account specifics first, course material second, book of style third, then Stedman's, and then internet sources that are, you know, good ones. Okay, so these are some other little random other ones that account that are acceptable, and we're going to go over that are not going to be counted. You're going to see them as marked as different, but they're not errors. Either way is acceptable. So vitals per EMR or vitals : per EMR. Either one, perfectly acceptable. If you have one, it'll show the other way. If you have the other, it'll show the other. So just know that. Also, your vital signs. And we're going to go into depth here just a little bit on your vital signs, but it's okay. Your account specifics say, Anna says, if without colon, you get marked with a difference if you don't stack. Well, Anna, that's a whole new thing. If you use one colon, you need to stack the physical exam, period. No, that's just it. If you do eyes, conjunctiva clear, you need to use a colon. That's eyes. That's not eyes are clear. Eyes have different parts of, you know, the eye. So you have to do eyes, conjunctiva clear. This is not acceptable. We're not talking about other things. We're talking about specifically vitals per EMR. This exact example right there. Vitals per EMR or vitals per EMR. This exact, this one right here. This exact example, vitals. You will see that. Now, the vital signs, it says in there, in the account specifics. Vital signs are okay. It's okay if it's in a simple list to be separated by commas. It's also okay to be separated by periods in a simple list. So you can do BP, 1/50 to do period, period, period. While we're talking about vital signs, let's just go over some general rules for punctuating the physical exam. So if you're just doing a simple series in a sentence, within a sentence, it's fine to use a comma or a period. Either one. But you're going to see them as differences. You're going to see differences. So if you put a period, you'll see a comma. If you put a comma, you'll see a period. But just know that as long as if you have a simple series with no ands or no verbs, and it's just listing the vital signs, just the vital sign and the value in a list, then you don't have to worry about it. You can do that with a period or a comma. Does not matter. Equally acceptable. Okay, if, however, there are internal commas, it's preferable to separate with semicolons, but you can use periods. It doesn't matter. Blood pressure. Okay, right here is your internal comma. That labored goes with respirations. So you want to have that together with the respirations. You don't want that just, it doesn't go, if you just put commas there, it wouldn't make sense. Can you hear me? Okay, good. Okay, so, and likewise, if the dictator gives the information in full sentences, thank you, Kathy, for letting me know, then you use periods. Thank you, guys. Let me know. I appreciate that. So if you have, it's almost easier. I mean, okay, so blood pressure 120/80, semicolon, pulse 82, respirations 18, labored goes with that, semicolon. So you're linking that as one unit, then temperature 37. Vital signs, these are all sentences. Blood pressure 120/80, period. That's a sentence. Pulse is 82, period. Respirations are 18, period. These are all sentences. Now you could use semicolons there, but it's just as easy to use periods. Okay, let's talk about sentences for just a minute since we're here. A sentence is a subject and a verb. BP is 120/80. BP, subject, is the verb. BP is 120/80. This is a sentence. It's an independent clause. It can stand on its own with a subject and a verb. Okay, let's add on. Repeat is 115/70. That's a sentence with an independent clause with a subject and a verb. So if you have two separate independent clauses or sentences, each with a subject and a verb, you have to separate it with either a period or a semicolon. BP is 120/80. Repeat is 115/70. That's correct. Or, it's closely related, you can use a semicolon right there. Both sentences. Okay? Any questions on that? Okay. But you cannot use a comma between two complete sentences. You just cannot do that. That causes a comma splice. So this is incorrect. BP is 120, comma, repeat is, that's not an acceptable variation. No, you cannot. Unless he says BP, you cannot use blood pressure. You need to type verbatim. If he says blood pressure, use blood pressure. If he says BP, use BP. Okay, so you cannot use a comma here. If a conjunction joins, then the only acceptable punctuation is a comma. So BP is 120/80, comma, and repeat is 115/70. So if you have the conjunction, it changes everything. So, but if you have these sentences, I see this so many times, two sentences, a comma between them. It's wrong. That's wrong. That's incorrect. It's not an acceptable variation. So don't be confused when you get these file signs back and you just think, oh, I'm correct. This is an acceptable variation. It's not if you're leaving a comma between two sentences. Okay, so let's look at this one. On exam today, blood pressure is 110/66. Student had a comma. This whole sentence. Pulse is 64, comma, temp 36.1. Okay, that's what she wrote with commas. Okay, well, we know now that's not acceptable. You know, you have to either use a period or a semicolon because these are sentences. Pressure is, pulse is, and then temp. Sandra says that is a good point when they use BP, PR. Do they have to be capital letters or can they be PR? I'm not sure what that means. Oh, PR. Oh, P like PR. Oh, yes, they all have to be capital. Yes, yes. Yes, sorry. Sandra, yes. They are BP and pulse, P for pulse, R for respirate or R rate, and WT for, yes, all capital. Okay, so here's let me go back. So this one is a period. And this student is this is the same one. I think I've seen that, okay. So blood pressure is 110/66, period. This student has done it correctly. This is what you call an acceptable variation right here. Period. The answer key has a semicolon. Period, semicolon. This is correct. The pressure is, they use the thing. So even though this looked like a hot mess and it's frustrating, it's correct. And the answer key has to show the acceptable variation, which is the semicolon. So once you learn the rules, it makes it so much easier. Also, these are acceptable. You can, use the comma, the periods. It's almost easier. And if it's just a sentence, you can and there's like just a phrase afterwards, you can use a comma. Okay, also acceptable in your count specifics, it says you can use Arabic or Roman numerals for cranial nerves, but be consistent, especially in the same report, okay? Pick one and choose it and just go with it. Okay, cool, thanks, Sandra. Okay, the count specifics also state that both patient and the patient are acceptable, but do note that we want you to be as verbatim as possible. Try not to add text if you want to. I mean, if it's not dictated, and but you're not going to be deducted for it. Okay. You will see it as a difference, though. Okay. Here's a good one. So they dictated procedure, but there's more than one. It's okay to make it grammatically correct, but it will show up as a difference. But it's not an error. Let's see. Problems is another one. It's okay to do these things, but doesn't mean it will show up as a difference, but it's not. So when you know that you're doing it correctly, even though it shows up as an error, it's not. Okay. And symbols. These symbols, you want to type out degree or micro, but you need to use the percentage. It says it's okay to use the percentage, the number, the dollar sign, the ampersand, the plus, and the minus sign. But there are rules that go along with that in the book of style. So the ampersand is okay to use. Don't put spaces in between. The answer key showed these two versions of the D and C and the D and C. Vivian? Okay, yeah. Okay, I'll look at that. But anyway, it's acceptable either way, and you will see it either way. And when you see it, just know that it's okay, and it's not counted, and you don't have to deduct for it. It's not an error. The minus sign. It's just minus, write out minus if you're not certain that the symbol will be noticeable. And it's always if it's below zero, like if it's minus 38 degrees outside or something like that. But always write out the blood types, O negative or positive. Listen, that 941 book of style is or 94 is a great reference, by the way. So even though it's okay to use the minus or negative sign or positive sign, it's also incorrect. It's not acceptable to write B and then the minus sign or the B and the negative sign. So there are rules within the acceptable variations also. Likewise with the number sign, it's okay to use the NO period or the number symbol, but with Tylenol number 3, you need to write that out as that's a brand name drug, and that's the way they have it. So just be aware of that. Any questions? I'm kind of moving quickly. Stephen says, what if we see 2 ways from the answer key? History is not otherwise changed. History is not otherwise changed. Is one or the other acceptable then? Yes. And we do not count, that's one of those we don't count off for those punctuation rules, and that's another thing. Um, go over your punctuation preamble and see what we do take off for and what we don't. Just because we don't take off for it, it doesn't mean that you don't need to learn those rules, but it doesn't mean that necessarily you have to use every single one of them, or we're definitely not going to be taken off for them. So you'll see those. And again, everybody doesn't use every rule exactly the same. That's one of the reasons why we don't grade those that way. Okay, on salutations, you'll see this also. Colon or comma after the salutation. Either is acceptable. Either is acceptable. Notice the all caps on to whom it may concern. But if you write it with a colon, you'll see it with name, comma. If you write it with a comma, you'll see colon come up. Just know that it's okay. It's just acceptable either way. More information on that, Book of Style 122. Doctor with a period versus doctor no period. Either is acceptable. Is it 2 or 3 lines? You know what, Beverly? We just use one line after every single, we just use one line between every paragraph. It doesn't matter if it's salutation or if it's anything else. We just use the same format, just one line, between, like one line break between each, or one solid line, does that make sense, between each paragraph. Okay, and you'll see this also, breweries versus brewery, and they sound the same. And so if you write breweries or if you write breweries, it doesn't matter. If you hear brewery, you can write, and if it's multiple, I would write the S on it, but you're not going to be counted off for writing brewery if it's singular. So just know that. And there's more to read about that in Stedman's. And then 14.1.2 is also good to hear. But you'll see this often. But either is acceptable. Glide wire. You'll see this. Same thing, acceptable. This is a term used frequently, and it's a generic term. It can be a name brand, but it is a generic term when it's used by itself, and it's totally acceptable both ways. This is another one. You'll see different spelling of the same word. Sometimes your company you work for will definitely want you to spell one way or the other way, but you'll have to figure that out. They will let you know. Short gut versus short gut with the hyphen. Stedman's has it without. No, steri strips. Well, I guess that's right, Sandra. I guess you're right. I know it's always, I've always capitalized it myself, but I guess that's the same type of thing, to be honest with you. Short gut versus short gut, the hyphenated. The 652 says don't hyphenate most of these entity modifiers, even when they precede the noun. And Stedman has it without the hyphen. But we allow it because of, we're not deducting to do that. Okay, so this is another one, sub Q. I'm kind of rushing here towards the end because I've got a few more things to go over, but sub Q is also okay to use. It's 941. Remember that, 941. Okay, let's go over a couple of things. Let's see if y'all can point out some of the, is this correct or incorrect? Is this acceptable? Is everything acceptable in here or no? No, no colon after emer. No, it's not all good. Let's just look at it. So vitals per emer, blood pressure is high, normal. Cannot use commas between sentences. Yes, you could do vitals colon per emer. That's perfectly acceptable, but it's also acceptable to do it this way, Janet. So that either way for that. But this two sentences, blood pressure is, repeat is, pulse is. You cannot use a comma between the sentences. You have to use a period or a semicolon. So this would be the correct way. Blood pressure is normal, period. Repeat is a little high, period. Pulse is, period. Or you could use a semicolon. Okay, let's look at, or you could do it that way. Okay, let's see this one. Is this one correct or not right? That sentence will get you. I'm telling you, I see that error so many times, you guys. Commas between sentences. You have to think of the vital signs as sentences. Okay. Okay, let's look at it. Not acceptable weight has internal commas. You have to use either a semicolon or a period. So you can do temp, comma, blood pressure. Here's where the internal comma is. So you'd have to use a semicolon here and a semicolon after the weight to put the weight up 5 pounds together to separate those two. Or you could do it with a period also. Okay? Separate that just by itself. Sandra said, I'm going to fill all these as I strictly use periods. Well, it's okay if you want to use periods. That is fine. I mean, honestly, I think it's fine to use. I'd say go for periods. Here's another one we see that's acceptable a lot. However, and I'm just going to switch this one over to show you. The patient is advised, because you'll see this one a lot of times marked wrong, but it's acceptable with a period or with the semicolon there. I think it's clear too. Sandra says the period is clearer to see. I think so too. Okay, how about this one? Vitals per emer, blood pressure is normal, repeat is a little high. It's okay or no? Not okay. Yay, yay, you guys, you got it. Good. You can use a semicolon or a period. Can't use comma. Good job. All right, what about this one? Patient is a 53-year-old female. Her vitals are normal. Her affect is flat. She seems depressed. HENT normal. The rest of the exam is normal. This is actually the trick, because it is formatting. Needs to be stacked. That's right, Joanne. That's right. This one, how about this one, you guys? Oh, the tenses were wrong. But you know what? I think I changed that one. This was correct. So looks good. Y'all were right. That was my bad. Okay, and I am running out of time. So this one right here at the very bottom, extremities, no edema, that has to be changed to a subheading. You have to make a subheading for that. And so you would have to stack the whole thing. Okay? That's not an acceptable variation. And I'm running out of time. So let me show you a couple of these. This is another one. All the little line breaks there. And you see those and you're like, what is wrong with that? And then you look at this and there's nothing there. That was wrong comma answer, key error right there. But all looks the same except for this abdominal exam. And note that needs to be revealed as a verb. So you need to make that just a sentence and not a subheading. All right. So you guys, in conclusion, I just want you to know that just because you see a green or purple sections, that don't assume that you've made an error. Please take the time to learn the acceptable variations. Look up words in your course material and Stedman to see if the spelling is correct. Learn the Book of Style rules. what we've gone over today does not cover all of the acceptable variations by far. I mean, by any means. Just know that this is like a complex field with many moving parts, so to speak. Rules change, account specifics change, and we have to be adaptable, and we have to be able to accept these changes. Usually the punctuation rules don't change, though. But some of the rules are not so black and white or clear cut, and there are gray areas. And the sooner you understand the allowable differences in your reports, the less frustrated and the more confident you will feel, especially when you work so hard on your reports and then you get back and you see that green and purple. If you have any questions on a report and you get it back and you still think, I'm not sure whether this is acceptable or not, send us an email at instructors@canscribe.com. And when you guys send this, thanks, Lorna, when you send us the chapter you're in, the time and date you transcribed the report, we don't see the link to the report as you do. We just see the date and time you transcribed it. Note the error number. And this helps us go straight to your report and find the error you're questioning about. And we definitely want you to have all the good information. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the webinar. I appreciate you coming. And thanks, Vivian. Thank you, guys. And Sandra, and let's see, I missed something. Lorna, thanks. This was most informative. I need a refresher, so thanks again. Oh, you're welcome, Lorna. Eileen, thanks. Susan, this just clarified some things. Have a great day. Thank you so much. Sandra, self-grading is where I also do lots of research and find I learned a lot. That's the truth. That is the truth. Excellent lesson today. Thank you, Vivian. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thanks, Lori. Appreciate that. Very helpful. Thank you, Sarah, Shannon. Thanks, Cameron. Thank you so much, Joanne. Thank you, Catherine and Joanne. I said that. Thank you. Thanks, Michelle. Thank you, Denise. I appreciate that. Janet, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Aw, thanks, Janice. Thank you. Great. I'm glad. I hope it helped, Lynn. And this will be posted on the forum at some point. And thanks, Trista. Glad y'all could come. Thank you, Danielle. Thanks, Nicole. Oh, good, Christ. Appreciate it. Thanks, Kathy. Good to see you. Thanks, you guys. Thanks, Sandra. These are good. Oh, thanks. Thanks, Jacqueline. Thanks, Abra. Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks, Sandy. Oh, thank you, Shelley. I appreciate that.